Bone Jumpers, Episode 1. The Suburb of Screams. The sky over my street was the color of reheated gasoline. It used to be blue. I remember that the way you remember a TV show you watched once and never saw again. Faded. Distant. Now the sky was just a bruised smear over a row of houses that all looked the same, except for how much they'd decayed. I was on the roof of our house. The shingles were hot under my palms even though the sun was already down. Heat rose out of the husks of cars and lawns and people and climbed into the sky to wait. The zombies liked roofs. They liked height. Maybe they remembered being human enough to miss the view. There were 3 of them on Mrs. Chow's roof across the cul-de-sac. They swayed like broken antennae. Their mouths hung open. Every so often, one leaned too far and a bit of something slid out and pattered down the shingles. They didn't seem to notice. "Stay there," I whispered at them, because it made me feel like I had any say in anything. One of them twitched. Its head turned a little like it heard something far away. Not me. I was good at being quiet. I'd had practice. The real noise came a second later. Engines. At first I thought I was imagining it. I'd dreamed sounds before. Footsteps in the hall when there was no one. Laughter from the school playground long after the swings stopped moving. I knew better than to trust my ears. But the engines got louder. Not just one, a pack. Deep, throaty revs that didn't fit this dead little street full of flipped minivans and melted dreams. The sound came down from the highway like thunder that got bored of the sky and decided to try the pavement. The zombies on Mrs. Chow's roof all snapped their heads toward the noise at once. "Okay," I breathed. "Not just me." There were rules when you were alone in a place like this. First rule: noise means trouble. Second rule: trouble usually means run. But there was a third rule, and I didn't like that one, because it didn't keep me alive. It just kept me from wanting to be dead. Third rule: if it's new, you have to see it. My legs made the decision before the rest of me caught up. I was already scrambling to the front peak of the roof, belly low, fingers catching in rough asphalt. From there, I could see over the burned maple trees to where the cul-de-sac opened onto the main road. The engines were close now. They were too loud for the silence we'd built here. The zombies on the roof started to moan, a low, rusted hinge of a sound, like they knew what was coming. Headlights hit the intersection at the end of the street like flares. Dust boiled up. Something heavy skidded. A horn that wasn't a car horn screamed. Then they turned the corner. 5 bikes. Maybe 6. Hard to count with all the light and smoke and the fact that my heart was beating in my throat hard enough to blur my vision. The first bike was white, or was once. What was left of the paint peeled off in strips, the way skin peels after a burn. Underneath was metal like I'd never seen, chrome and bone welded together. Ribs bent into fuel tank, spinal column running straight down into the frame. Blue fire poured from the exhaust in slow, lazy tongues, like the air was thick syrup. The thing riding it used to be a man. Now it was a skeleton in a shredded set of star-spangled leathers. The suit hung off steel bones. The stars were scorched. The stripes were more ash than red. The skull grinned with no lips to get in the way. A beard of white sparks and shredded fabric trailed behind it, streaming in the slipstream like a comet tail. That was the first time I saw Evil Ken Evil. Behind him, the others fanned out. One bike dragged a chain that threw off a rooster tail of orange sparks. Another pulled a sidecar made entirely of welded femurs. There was a chopper with pipes that looked like church organ tubes belching smoke. There was something lean and long that might have been a dirt bike before someone replaced its front wheel with a spinning saw blade. The air changed when they entered the circle of the cul-de-sac. It got thicker, like the noise had weight. The roof under me hummed. I could feel it through my elbows. The zombies felt it too. Every dead thing on every roof in every direction turned toward the center of the circle like flowers following the sun. Their heads jerked, their jaws worked. Some started to shuffle, dragging themselves toward the edge of the roofs as if they might jump. None of them did. They weren't the ones who jumped tonight. The bikes slowed in unison, engines still snarling. They idled in a ring around the big empty patch of asphalt where we used to play street hockey. Oil stains and burned rubber marked the spots where minivans exploded, where neighbors tried to get out and didn't. Evil Ken stamped a boot, steel toes, bones showing through leather, and his bike skidded to a perfectly sideways stop. Blue fire licked the pavement and didn't catch. It flickered like it was tasting. He just sat there for a second, skull bowed like he was listening for something only he could hear. Then he looked up. I knew he couldn't see me. I was a speck on a rooftop in the dark. But it felt like he did. That grinning skull tipped. Just a little, like a nod. I forgot to breathe. A figure peeled away from the ring. Smaller than the others, bike purring instead of snarling. Purple helmet with a skull stenciled across the visor in silver that caught the light wrong, like it was painted with something that used to be alive. She didn't rev, didn't showboat. Just raised one hand, gloved in cracked leather, fingers too long, joints bending at angles that made my eyes hurt, and held it there. The air changed, got heavier, tasted like engine oil and old meat. The horde of zombies that had surrounded them moved. Not shambling, not the usual dead leg drag. They moved with purpose, like puppets when the strings go taut. It was like watching ants dismantle a picnic, all instinct and choreography, except ants don't move because someone's hand told them to. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Her fingers curled just slightly, and the dead obeyed. They started building the ramp. There was plenty of material. Dead suburbia was made of it. They dragged husks of cars into the circle, stacked them nose to tail. They yanked garage doors off hinges and laid them over the pile. They grabbed fallen utility poles, broken swing sets, a chunk of someone's front porch. Everything bolted together with impossible speed. One of the bikes, the one with the surgical rig strapped to its side, backed up to the heap. A skeleton with a surgeon's lamp fused to its skull hopped off and started welding, sparks spraying. Metal screamed. The ramp grew teeth. All around, the audience gathered. That was the only word for it. Audience. Zombies lined the sidewalks, shoulders bumping. They slumped against mailboxes and broken fences, faces tilted toward the growing structure. Their mouths moved. No sound came out. It was like they were mouthing along to a song only they remembered. Living people crept out too. A pair of looters in mismatched armor peeked from behind a burned-out SUV, guns half raised, then lowered as they saw the bikes. A woman in a stained nightgown with a shotgun held like a baby leaned against a tree, eyes wide. A group of kids, smaller than me, bigger than they felt, clustered around the rusted shell of a mail truck. Nobody talked. Even the living knew better than to shout over this. Rev Torque, the preacher one, suit in rags, ribcage glowing with a cross-shaped crack, climbed onto a car hood and spread his arms. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice screamed like a broken engine. Tonight, he boomed, tonight the dead remember why they died. The zombies swayed and howled. Tonight, he said, we jump the little bit of hell you called home. We jump your fear. We jump your boredom. We jump the part of you that stayed here when your feet ran. My throat tightened. I didn't run when my parents did. I stayed. But parts of me ran anyway. Parts of me were still running. Evil Ken. Evil revved his engine once. Just once. The sound was a bomb. The ramp was finished. It clawed up from the asphalt like the spine of something too big to bury. The top pointed straight at the sky, a jawbone made of minivans and doors and dreams. I slid forward until my fingers wrapped the edge of the roof. Splinters dug into my palms. I didn't care. I wanted to see everything. The preacher bowed his head. "Engines be with you," he intoned. "And also with you," the crowd whispered, all at once. I didn't know this prayer, but my lips moved anyway. Evil Ken didn't move yet. He sat there, engine idling, skull tilted like he was waiting for something. Then another bike peeled out from behind the surgeon's rig. It was smaller, leaner, almost delicate compared to the bone-chrome monsters around it. The frame was polished steel wrapped in strips of dried flesh that had been lacquered to a sick shine. Bones, femurs, tibias, ribs were woven through the spokes like basket weave, light enough to whistle when the wheels spun. The whole thing looked fast the way a knife looks sharp. The rider was tattered. Leather jacket in ribbons, jeans shredded to streamers. But the helmet was pristine, glossy black, with a grinning skull decal that matched Evil Ken's face. Robbie Zombie. I didn't know the name yet, but I'd learn it. Everyone would. He didn't wait for a blessing, didn't wait for the crowd to settle. He just gunned it. The bike shrieked up the ramp, lighter and faster than anything that size should be. The flesh strips snapped in the wind. The bone spokes sang. He hit the lip doing at least 70, and the bike launched like it had been fired. Mid-air, he let go of the handlebars. The crowd gasped, one unified intake of breath from 100 dead and dying throats. Robbie twisted, body arcing sideways, arms spread wide like a diver. The bike spun beneath him, a full rotation, frame glinting. For one perfect second he hung there, separated from the machine, crucified against the bruised sky. Then his hands snapped back to the grips. He caught them, pulled the bike back under him, lined up for the landing. Almost. The front tire hit first, half a second too early and 3 degrees too far left. The frame shuddered. The back end came down hard, bounced, torqued sideways. Bone spokes shattered with sounds like breaking teeth. Robbie held on. The bike skidded, trailing sparks and fragments of lacquered flesh. It fishtailed across the far side of the cul-de-sac, handlebars whipping left, right, left. One foot peg caught the pavement and tore free, tumbling end over end into the gutter. He went down. Not a slide, a tumble. Undead man and bike tangled together, rolling in a chaos of limbs and metal and the wet smack of dead flesh hitting asphalt. A wheel broke loose and rolled off on its own, wobbling down the street like it was looking for an exit. The crash went on forever. Every piece that tore free made its own noise, pings, crunches, the wheezing hiss of a punctured tire. When it finally stopped, Robbie Zombie lay in a heap 20 feet from where he'd landed, one leg still hooked over the bike frame. The crowd was silent. Then Robbie moved. He sat up slow, joints popping. His head was cocked wrong, tilted hard to the left like someone had tried to unscrew it and stopped halfway. He reached up, grabbed his own skull, and wrenched it back toward center with a crack that made my stomach flip. It didn't quite straighten. His head stayed angled, just a little, like he was always listening to something off to the side. He stood, grabbed the mangled bike, lifted it with arms that shouldn't have had the strength, and he grinned. The crowd erupted, screams, howls, laughter that sounded like choking. Someone started chanting his name. "Robbie! Robbie! Robbie!" He dragged the bike to the edge of the circle and let it drop. Turned back toward Evil Ken, head still crooked, and raised both fists. Evil Ken's skull tipped forward. Not quite a nod. More like acknowledgement. Then he revved his engine once. The sound was a total bomb. Evil didn't say anything. He just leaned forward, skull catching the streetlight like polished metal. His beard of sparks flared. The bike moved. It was slow at first. A roll, a lazy crawl. Then the back tire bit into the pavement, and the front end rose with a roar that ripped the night open. Blue fire blasted from the pipes, painting the zombies' faces ghost bright as he streaked past them. He hit the base of the ramp. I'd watched a lot of things since the world ended. People eaten. Houses burn. The river run red when the sewer backed up and the bodies popped in the sun. I'd never seen anything truly leave the ground. Not like this. Evil Ken Evil rocketed up that strip of welded suburb like it hated him personally. The bike howled. The ramp shook. For a second, I was sure it was going to collapse under him, and we'd all watch the legend snap in half. It didn't. He exploded off the lip. Time stretched. Below him, the circle was a mouthful of upturned faces, living and dead and, worse. Their arms were up without meaning to be. Their heads were back. Their eyes were full of him. They believed, and for a second, that was enough. Pieces of ramp peeled away behind him, mailboxes, shingles, a porch swing, tumbling in slow, burning arcs. Blue and orange fire frothed from his exhaust, leaving a comet trail that hung in the air like someone drew a line between this world and the next. He wasn't jumping a row of cars. He was jumping us. The houses, the years, the neighbors' names I didn't say anymore. All of it was down there in the dark, and he was up here, something that forgot how to fall. I realized I was standing. My hands came off the roof edge. My arms went out like the others. My chest hurt. He landed. When the tires hit the ramp on the far side of the cul-de-sac, the shock went up through the pavement into every house. Windows rattled, walls shook, glass breaking. He didn't wobble. The bike hugged the ground for one more second, then straightened as if the whole thing was just a slow breath he finally let go. The crowd exploded. The living screamed. Some laughed. Some sobbed. The zombies moaned, a sound deeper than hunger, almost like applause dragged backwards through a graveyard. I was laughing. I didn't remember starting. I didn't remember standing. My throat hurt in a good way. He circled back, slow, letting them see him, letting them look. The sparks from his beard fell and winked out before they hit the ground. He stopped by RevTorque. The preacher leaned in, said something I couldn't hear. Evil Ken cut the engine. The sudden silence was a different kind of roar. By the time I got down the ladder, the show was over. The crowd was already dispersing. The zombies stood where they were, heads turned toward where the bikes were a moment ago. I walked toward the center of the circle like I belonged there. The bone jumpers were packing up. Ramps unbolted themselves under the surgeon's hands. Chains coiled, cables retracted. It was a circus leaving town, if the circus was a murder of crows. Evil Ken stood off to one side, helmet under one bony arm. His skull caught the last of the light. Up close, I could see the cracks running through it, hairline fractures glowing faint blue. I didn't mean to get as close as I did. My feet just kept going until there was only 10 steps between us. 5, 3. He looked at me. It was like looking into a bonfire and seeing your own bones reflected back. I ran away. "Convoy rolling out!" Evil Ken Evil shouted. "Keep up or die trying." Then he turned away, tossed his helmet up, caught it in a hand made of cables and bone, and swung onto the bike in one smooth, impossible motion. The engines fired. One by one, the bone jumpers peeled out of the circle and roared back toward the highway, trailing fire and ash and pieces of the suburb that still thought they were going somewhere. The purple rider circled once, slow, that too long hand raised again. The zombies that had been standing like lawn ornaments suddenly lurched into motion, not chasing, following. There was a difference. They fell in behind the bikes in a ragged procession, dozens of them, maybe more, streaming out of yards and from between houses. Some crawled, some limped. One dragged itself along by its arms, legs trailing uselessly behind. She guided them like a conductor, fingers twitching in small, precise gestures I couldn't read, but the dead understood perfectly. The living watched them go. Nobody tried to stop the zombies. Nobody even looked surprised. This was part of the show, too. I stood there until the sound was gone and the dust settled. The zombies walked right past me, didn't acknowledge me. I don't have a bike. I don't have a plan. I don't have anything except a backpack, a roof I won't sleep on again, and a feeling in my chest like the moment at the top of the ramp when everything lets go. I start walking. Because some things you run from, and some things you follow.